figuring out a project is not the same thing as figuring out yourself.
For too long, we've been led to believe that only two types of people can have an extraordinary creative career: creative genius and people who hustle so hard that they're working all the time. Here on the Everyday Talent Podcast, we are shattering that myth. This podcast is built on one truth, which is every one of us can have an extraordinary creative career. The way to get there is not by sacrificing all of ourselves to our work, but rather embracing our authentic selves and carve out unique paths to a fulfilling and joyful creative life. Hello and welcome. My name is Betty. I'm a creative and a coach for creators. I've coached photographers, filmmakers, visual artists, arts consultants, and arts leaders to make intentional career shifts and build thriving independent practices. This podcast is for you if you're looking to cut through the noise of what you should be doing in your creative career and figure out what actually works and matters for you. Before we begin, I want to remind you to subscribe to this podcast on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, YouTube, or your platform of choice. Leave us a rating and review and share this podcast on your social so that more amazing creatives out there can find out about this podcast and feel seen. Hey everyone, welcome back to another episode of the podcast. Today we're having a very, very special conversation with a special guest. And I wanted to invite this guest on this podcast because for me, her story represents a really unique, but at the same time, universal theme in our career, which is up to a certain point in our career, once we have so much achievement or accumulated some achievement in one area of our career, how do we dare to make a shift? Whether you are doing your independent practice or you have a job, sometimes it is exactly when things are going well that it is hard for us to challenge ourselves and go beyond the status quo. And for me, today's guest did exactly that. She was previously the executive director of a very successful film festival. And at the height of her achievement and her leadership, she decided it was time for her to move on and explore more possibility in her career. We're going to hear from Ananya today. Ananya is an arts management consultant, writer, and producer in Toronto. She was the executive director at the Regent Park Film Festival for 7 years, where she founded and directed the Lieutenant General Award-winning storytelling and preservation project, Home Make Visible. Motivated by her experience programming for school-aged children and consuming media alongside her own kids, Ananya is currently producing, writing, creating content for children that centers BIPOC narratives. Without further ado, let's go into this conversation with Ananya. Welcome to the podcast, Ananya.
Thanks, Betty. I'm excited to be here.
Yeah, thank you so much for coming on the podcast. I invited you because I've long admired your work. We work a little bit back in Regent Park Film Festival. We had a little bit of overlap, and you've gone on and do amazing things. Can you tell the audience what you do and how you come to do what you do?
So I am an arts administrator, a producer, and a writer. And these words, there's been a journey to them. And I think that if I'm really introducing what I do, I would also add, I'm a person who's ultimately looking for a feeling of peace and contentment in life while having fun. And I'm actively working on my relationship to work. And I'm a mom, a partner, a daughter, a sister, and a friend. And these relationships matter to me. And I'm always trying to figure out how to navigate them in relation to these professional titles that I've given myself.
Mm-hmm. There's so much to unpack right there. I'm I'm curious, like how you mentioned you're constantly kind of reflecting your relationship with work. How has that like become a thing that you recognize that is important to you?
So right out of my master's, which was in community engagement, which was in cinema studies,
Mm,
and where I was able to kind of bring in community engagement and cinema studies, writing that master's thesis was exciting and really enriching. But oh my gosh, at the end of it, I wanted to put myself into something concrete. And so, Regent Park Film Festival, where I was the ED for I don't know how long, 7 or 8 years.
8 years, I
Um,
check before this
okay.
interview. Yeah.
And it was perfect because it brought together community engagement and media. And I could apply myself, and so it was this like this need that I had like in my body to like get up and do something.
Hmm.
And it was so it was the perfect thing that, and I was able to do that. But at the end of it, and it was at the time of my life where I didn't have children, I didn't have a family, and I was able to give myself to it entirely. And at the end of it, I was burnt out, and
Hmm.
it really made me reflect on, um, how do I want to keep working, and what kind of environment do I want to create for others too?
Hmm.
Should anybody ever have to give that much of themselves to their work? Um, and I guess I had gotten into certain habits that actually made it very hard to get
Mm,
anything done without feeling overwhelmed and anxious and not present.
hmm.
And so that's what I mean by kind of working on my relationship to work, because I want to
Mm,
enjoy it.
mm,
And I wasn't doing that anymore.
hmm. I mean, I obviously know you and know a bit of the transition that you from like the amazing tenure that you had with Regent Park Film Festival, uh, and the legacy that you built there, and like make that move to really like explore yourself. I, from my perspective, if that's like resonates with how you see that phase, like
Mhm.
and from me and I think from others' perspective, it's like a courageous move that coming out from the executive director of an arts organization, and you said like I'm going to re-explore myself and almost
Yeah.
like reinvent yourself.
Yes.
How was that? Tell us a little bit of that kind of mid-career, a significant shift. Yeah.
So to leave the Regent Park Film Festival felt very scary.
Hmm.
But to try different things was very exciting, even though I lost the sense of I'm doing something I'm very good at.
Hmm.
And because I was doing something that was so new to me, um, I was able to kind of face my inner fears, let
Hmm.
myself do bad work, let myself fail, and give myself permission to take time. All these things that are part of the creative process that I never had time for before.
Hmm.
So, and of course, the way I'm able to make time for it, is that I finally, I think recently, been able to accept that, okay, I'm actually a good arts administrator.
Hmm.
And while I was burnt out by that, um, after the Regent Park Film Festival,
Hmm.
I can actually use that to make some more time for the creative work that I do. So it feels really good to embrace that side of me. Um, and like these are things that people find very stressful, but I seem to be able to
Hmm.
um, float right through, like making budgets and
Hmm.
writing grants and so forth. So one of the things I'm learned in this transition is that if I embrace the things that I'm good at that come so easy to me, I can also make time for those things that feel so difficult, and that balances out my like the anxiety I feel on a daily basis. Um, because
Yeah.
I can make some money while doing something that I enjoy that doesn't stress me out, to make some time
Hmm.
for things that stress me out but I find very fulfilling.
Hmm. You know the narrative that I hear, and I know Nanania, like just hearing you say this is like sometimes we need to break free from a structure that we know so well that like how contains us to like almost like crack it open and look at everything again and reorganize some of the things because now you like embrace your creative side, but you also like come back to embrace your arts administrative side. And
Mm.
so it's not so like kind of black and white of like you walk away from your arts leader role and you're just going to be the artist, but rather it's kind of reorganizing all these elements that are true about yourself in your career.
Yeah, and I think that's helping me rediscover play.
Mm,
And, like as an arts administrator, one of the things that you do is that you plan and you organize and you execute and you
hmm
evaluate. But there's this sense of achievement and that you are working towards. And when you're playing, you don't know what's going to happen, and that's been really refreshing.
mm, hmm I really love that you mentioned this element play because I think about it like that is an essential ingredient in the creative process. And then I also think about kind of the reality of like of what all of us who have like a creative career. Sometimes when we're so overwhelmed and stressed, our brain literally has no room for play.
Yeah.
So how has like play become like how do you hold space for play, and how has play kind of become a like theme that you explore in your work nowadays?
So I think the thing I'm discovering about play is that, I guess this is something that people say all the time, is that, the process is important, perhaps more important than the product.
Hmm
Um, and sometimes that's easier to say to other people than to yourself. Um, and and so play requires practice, I guess, Um, and so I've discovered play requires practice. Give yourself time to play and don't worry about the end result. So, and then play, there's an acceptance of where you
hmm
are, and that's where you are. But what's been incredible with this play thing is that I set aside a time to like write every morning, and sometimes nothing comes up, or maybe something comes up. But what I've discovered is that now I'm able to like turn that on when I'm like designing an Excel sheet.
Huh. Tell me more. What's that mean?
And like I'll be like, wouldn't it be fun if I knew how to like write Excel code that'll then bring this information together and
Hmm
give me this answer? Like, it's not something I have to do right away, but it's an interest that's in, like, I'm not just concerned about doing
hmm
exactly what I'm supposed to do, but I'm thinking about how fun it would be. And there
hmm
is an element of like wonder and curiosity that's like brought back to my arts administrative life.
Wow.
Um, so I feel like
hmm
I'm enjoying that work again,
Yeah.
but I think a big thing has to do with time, and I really feel for executive directors. I really feel for them because they're
Yes.
like burdened with so much. They have to manage so much. They don't have time like
hmm
um for that play. Um
hmm
let alone like eating their lunch or whatever. So,
Yeah. I mean, I've interviewed like other executive directors on this, or former executive director as well,
mhm,
like on this
mhm,
podcast,
yeah.
and like everybody's take on it is different, but you like in just like it's a universal truth how big of a job that is. That it's all encompassing and takes
Yes.
all faculty of your intellect and body that you can put in, right?
And people
So
depend on you. People depend on you.
yeah, the accountability and the
Yeah.
responsibility is gigantic. And I want to like there's I want to come back to the creative process again, but like
Oh, yeah.
before I do that, for you talk about this mid-career transition that like it took you a lot of inner work, rediscovering some of the things that are true to yourself, facing your fear.
Mhm.
Like you said, it's like easier than said than done. So I'm
Mhm.
really curious, like what support, like on the days that are very difficult or things times that you doubt your decision, what support you in this process?
So when I
Hmm
decided that I was going to step down from the Regent Park Film Festival, I didn't know what I was going to do. I
mm
had been my own boss for 8 years now, although of course the board I reported to the board, but like, and
hmm
I didn't know, um, I didn't know what it would be like to go work somewhere, and I didn't know where I wanted to work, and I've
mm
always kind of functioned on my gut. and my gut was saying nothing,
That's
nothing at all.
scary. Yeah.
It was so scary. I've always functioned on my gut, and my gut said nothing at all. Um, and I was also finding, because I was burnt out, I didn't want a leadership position. So what was I going to apply for? And I didn't want to, I
Mm-hmm.
everything I was kind of averse to, and I had stepped down at a time where I was just coming out of or I had started my mat leave, so I had a year
Mm-hmm.
to figure it out, and my gut that whole time said nothing,
Nothing.
nothing.
Wow.
I think the times where it spoke to me was when I would see a grant and I would have an idea and I would say, okay. So I wrote a few grants and I was able to get them. So it was project based, it was like,
Mm-hmm.
I, and so I followed that. And then the pandemic started, and it was incredibly hard because the children were at home all the time, and I was finding myself snapping, because I really want my habit of working all the time, and there are these kids who are trying to get my attention, and I
Yeah.
realized that I actually can't be present at home at all. I rather
Mm-hmm.
just be working all the time.
Mm-hmm.
But that's not. I mean, I have a family, and I need to learn how to be there.
Mm-hmm.
So part of my, like, I had to train my gut and my instincts to kind of turn towards inwards towards home a bit, and then be like, what works for me, what works for my family, what kind of work, and my gut said nothing. um
Wow.
um
There's a bit of unlearning that like I hear throughout this conversation. Unlearning the pattern that you were working,
yeah,
unlearning
I think what was
being busy
happening
all
was
the time. Yeah.
yeah, there was a lot of no, you can't do that again. No, I don't want to do that. No, I don't want to go work for another organization.
Mm-hmm.
No, I want to take a break from, I don't want to do events anymore. No, I don't want people to depend on me. There was just
Mm-hmm.
no, no, no all over the place. And no, I
Mm-hmm.
don't want to be at home. So it was very confusing.
Mm-hmm.
But I think some of the things that got me through that, one I'd say was lucky enough to get some therapy
Mm-hmm.
that helped deal with just the
Yes.
anxiety of the void.
Mm-hmm.
Two was that I met up with friends, or made friends who were. I knew that I was interested in writing, but I didn't know what I could do. Like, so I found
Mm-hmm.
collaborators and friends who I could work on these projects I'd gotten grants for.
Mm-hmm.
And it was only with the support of other people and their company
Mm-hmm.
that I was able to kind of move forward with these projects and kind of
Right.
cultivate a, a gut feeling,
Mm-hmm.
because it was not coming from within. And so I'm working on developing a TV show, and I could have done it myself, but I actually reached out and found somebody to work on it, co-develop it with me, and
Mm-hmm.
and that helped me move forward. Similarly, some of the other projects, if it wasn't for a community or company of others, I think I would be faltering
Mm.
still. Um,
Where is your gut now? It's like very
my
curious
gut,
about.
oh
Yeah.
my gut
What's your
now.
relation? Yeah. Where's your relationship with your gut now?
I think my gut is okay. So here's
Mm-hmm.
the other thing, is that I was always told have a plan. And because I had no gut feeling, I have no plan. And
Mm-hmm.
that was freaking me out because I'm, like I plan and
Mm-hmm.
I know the pathways or whatever. And so I've learned to trust that things will work out and I will follow my way through. Um, and so my gut does feel quite strong right now,
Mm-hmm.
which is that I'm at a good place where I'm slowly working away at the writing that
Mm-hmm.
I'm doing, um, with people, with other people.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm also doing arts management consulting, which actually feels really great because it allows me to get in touch with like things that I'm good at and build the skills that I've really enjoyed, and then turn to the creative stuff. Um, and I'm reaffirmed. My gut feels like this is a good place to be.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and I also feel really good about being at home. I feel good about being able to pick up my kids and spend
Mm-hmm.
time with them. And I also feel good about being like, you know what, go do something else because I have this to do. And I feel, yeah, like that sense of like guilt about not being present is no longer there. Um, So I don't know in terms of like what is it that I'm going to do. Am I going to go
Right.
get a job, like a full-time job at an organization in 2 years? My gut is still silent about it. But I feel I'm okay with that. Actually, I'm good with where I am, um, and I'm
My
excited to
God,
work with other
yeah,
people. Yeah.
yeah. What you just shared, I'm like, oof, it gives me like chills because like when I like got trained as a coach, we talk about like I feel like almost like half the course was about like listening on all different levels. Listening was one of the things that we practice
Yeah.
like immensely, and there's this concept of like listening on your thoughts, your heart, and then your gut. So
Hmm.
like what you just share like really like resonates with me, but sometimes I'm still kind of wrestling with that as well, especially when I tell other people like listen, like how do you distinguish like listening to deep down that gut sense. Everybody kind of like has a different spot for it. It's hard to cultivate that like relationship. So but what I recognize is that like if you there's no this internal trust with yourself, it's hard to manage that uncertainty with our career. And with like artistic practice, it's intrinsically uncertain. There's no one year that we can say that whole year is planned.
Hmm.
So it's
Yeah.
really kind of cultivating that inner trust that I heard from you, that you've been doing so much inner work in
Yes.
like holding that spiritual relationship with your gut. I love it.
Thank you.
So
Yeah.
tell me a bit, now that you have this like new practice, artistic practice, arts management consulting. You tell me a bit about like what your creative work right now. Like I know that you have a TV show in development.
Mhm.
What drew you to those topics? Like tell us a bit more about it. Yeah.
Sure. Yeah. So storytelling and community engagement have been like my two pillars from the very beginning. And the TV show came around when I was like holding my newborn, and my 4-year old at the time was like watching some TV show, and she was internalizing all these things about race, um, in this way that I've always heard about but never witnessed myself. And and I really wanted her to have other things to watch. And
Mm-hmm.
over the last 5 years, actually, I've seen some great things. So the needle is moving on that. And thankfully, the Canada Council happened to have like a grant open for people to propose uh, digital ideas for digital projects. And one thing I've gotten away, like one thing I've learned or developed at the Regent Park Film Festival was writing great grants. And so it kind of like started from there. It was starting my grant writing skills really, which has led me to open up opportunities for myself where I can do more creative work. So uh, I'm developing this TV show with
Uh-huh.
my friend Fiona Ray Clark, and we have a great team on board of people who've been doing this work for a long time. So I'm new at it, but I get to now have a team of people who are really amazing at it to work with.
Mm-hmm.
And at the same time, I'm writing a collection of short stories for kids, and really trying to develop on my way on developing samples of writing for myself so I can have um maybe in a little while write for a TV show myself. Let's see. I think I'm intrigued and curious about the world of kids storytelling, and I've always been that way. I feel like I'm stuck as a 10-year-old actually. So I'm just keen to explore all sides of that. Um, and as I do that, that's everything I want to talk about actually. So
Yeah, yeah.
um,
I mean, I have a follow-up question if you don't
yeah,
mind. Like
yeah, yeah,
the
yeah,
what like because I might be like adding my own perception connecting the dots, but we talked about play earlier in this
yeah,
conversation,
yeah.
and you are someone that like are drawn to children's content. Like
Mhm.
what like I'm like noticing a pattern there. Like so like tell us more like what about like content for kids that draws you?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think I'm drawn to content for kids for a couple of reasons. One reason is I think I have always created content for kids. I was the
Mm,
oldest, not quite the second oldest of all my cousins, and so I would just sit there and tell stories. And I would sometimes be shocked at how engaged all my cousins and their friends would be, and those are just memories that I've cherished. Um, and I immigrated to Canada when I was 10. And for some reason, my inner me has just like stayed 10 for better or for worse. Like there's not
mm,
always great to be 10. Um, and there's also something very vulnerable about being a kid. But also, when you're a kid, you don't have to worry about making, well, I mean, everybody can make a difference, et cetera, et cetera. But
mm,
you don't have to worry about making a big change or like carrying a big responsibility. You can just have fun. Um, And I feel like I just have the sense that this idea that I'm going to make a big difference in the world has kind of always held me back. And whenever I'm not too worried about it,
yeah.
um, it leads to something meaningful.
Mm. There's like a genuine curiosity that is like genuine curiosity comes from a place of innocence that kids have that we don't have, like, or we like adults don't have it except when we
Yeah.
tap into our inner child. Yeah.
Or we place value judgments on, right? This is a waste of
Hmm.
time. Um, and what's the purpose of this? Um, and with those, we kind of kill our curiosity and joy.
Hmm.
Um, so I think children's content, stories for kids, whatever that means, there's a freedom that I'm able to access more easily than in other content. And maybe it takes me away from that voice that says you're wasting your time.
Mm.
Um,
In a world like, yeah, exactly, like I think that's like I think a lot about like I think about this maybe like from a different angle where like you mentioned plan earlier, like we all want to have a plan once we enter our adult age, but children don't, and or children don't think about it that way. Like,
yeah,
but like in the adult life where we also quantify it with like efficiency and plan
yeah,
and certainty,
yeah.
there is something beautiful about like not thinking about any of that and just play. Yeah.
Yeah, and there's like it, and in that, you're not always trying to change something else or change yourself. You're just letting yourself be.
Mm,
And so I feel like that really once again has to do with like where I am in my own life and wanting to give myself that space to just be.
mm. I feel like I feel like we have a full circle moment there with how you introduce yourself at the beginning. That you just are someone who want to like find peace and calm.
Yes. Yeah. Like, I had like an informational interview with somebody a few weeks ago, and they were like, "So is your ultimate goal wanting to work for this organization?" And I was like, "No." This is like not the thing to say. And I was
Hmm.
like, "I just want to have a peaceful, content life. That's
Hmm.
my ultimate goal. I don't know
Yeah.
what the pathway to that is, and your organization's really interesting." Um,
Yeah. Like it's just really like our ultimate goal is like with like having that kind of presence and peace of mind that like we don't need to necessarily always be like, in forward motion. Like I resonate with that a lot. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. I
Hmm.
think like work is really important to me. I really like the types of work that I do and I want to do
Yeah.
well at it. I also want to be mindful of how much I identify with my work.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and and how that limits me and other people around me. I think. When I left the Regent Park Film Festival, I had a
Mm.
dream that the new ED married my husband.
Wow, there's some really weird Freudian stuff going on there.
Yeah, and in my
Yeah,
dream, I was like, "This is hurtful, but it makes sense. It should be this way."
like your
Um,
work is your like, yeah,
and
you,
because like the Regent Park Film Festival and me were like one,
yeah,
like
we're one,
I,
yeah.
yeah, and even now sometimes I'm really like concerned and thinking about it. But I
Wow.
it's we're separate entities.
Yes. Yeah, for sure. So, might I ask them, like, what are things that you're curious to explore next?
What
Yeah.
I'm interested in how work is done, and I wonder, as an arts administrator, how different organizations, and I'm particularly thinking about the film festival world, can work together to improve the conditions of the people involved. As an arts administrator, I'm also curious about, because it's all about, we talk a lot about organization and efficiency, but how do you kind of let things go a little bit, and what that kind of chaos can give birth to. Why does everything have to be so organized? As a person who's a storyteller, I'm curious about I'm just curious about what kind of stories I'm going to tell, and who's going to read them.
Mm,
And what, like, I'm just curious about putting stories out into the world.
hmm
um and I want to know what it's like to complete. I'm really excited about the show that's
hmm
in development, and every step of the process is new for me. So
mm,
I'm just generally curious about producing and what that feels like.
yeah. Wow, that's very exciting. It's like multifaceted. Like, I mean, the stuff that you talk about festival, I was just nodding my head away. Like, how does the structures actually serve the people? Uh,
Yeah,
and
yeah.
uh, and keeping it open minded for your creative endeavor and not like limiting it to anything. That's great. Like, to end of this interview, I want to kind of ask you to provide some advice for people who were or who are similar to where you were at, where are they have like they have achieved some success in either arts administration or artistic career, and are looking to make a shift.
Hmm.
And you know like how that can involve a lot of fear, the difficulty that comes with it. What's your advice for that person that's in that spot?
I would have two things to say which have worked well for me, which have been key for me, is to be in touch with others, whether that's your friends or other community groups, um, other just talk about it all the time.
Mm,
um,
process it, like,
Process it, and
yeah.
sometimes process by talking about it is different,
Mm,
than just thinking about it. And don't be hard on yourself if you don't know what you're doing, but do find that one thing, or do find something that you're doing, and then find your way through that. Find your way through doing.
mm,
Um, don't worry about if it's the right thing to do, but do something, and then let that lead you to the next thing. Um,
mm,
if you're in a place like me where your gut's not speaking to you, and you don't have a plan exactly, but you have a host of feelings that make no sense, start with something.
yeah. Like in the learning or like in the doing that you also like discover something. Is what I heard there.
Yes, that's it. In the doing you discover something, and that leads you
Hmm
to the next revelation. And it also helps you kind of process whatever is happening for you inside.
hmm
Whereas the thinking, I get stuck anyway with the thinking. It's
hmm
not, yeah, figuring out a project is not the same thing as figuring out yourself.
I wish I can like bring that. I might need to transfer that in like a sound bite. Figure out the project is not like the same as figuring it out yourself. That's so true. It's
Yeah,
like,
I wish it was. I mean, I wish it was more like, look at my, like, this is what I'm going to achieve.
yeah.
This is how much
Look at
time
my
I.
CV. Look at my IMDb. Like those tell nothing about like what's going on with that person.
Yeah.
Wow, beautiful. So, Ananya, if people listening to this podcast want to check out your work or want to connect with you, where should they go?
Well, people can visit ananyaohri.com. That's ANANYAOHRI.com. They can also just email me at ananyaohri.com.
We will include that in the show note, yeah, so that people
Yeah.
don't need to. Yeah, great.
Yes. I feel
Where they
like,
can they watch your pilot? Is it somewhere that is
oh
accessible?
my gosh, yes. Thank you for mentioning
Hmm.
that. It's on the CBC Kids YouTube and the CBC
Yes.
Kids website. It's called Mixed Up, and it's an 8-minute long pilot.
Did you enjoy this conversation? We covered a lot of ground today. And one thing that I really, really appreciate about this conversation is how intentional Ananya is with every question that I ask her. She doesn't take it lightly in terms of like the things that she's offering to you and to all of us here. Because I think she knows the weight for someone who is thinking about making a career transition, and for someone who is thinking about their artistic possibility and rebuilding the relationship with work after experiencing burnout and exhaustion. So I hope that you're taking away some nuggets from here, and I certainly encourage you to reach out to Ananya or myself if you have any thoughts and feedbacks from this conversation. Thank you so much for listening today. As always, you know where to find me. I'm reachable through Instagram or LinkedIn. And I also encourage you to, if you haven't ever already, subscribe to this podcast on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, YouTube, or your platform of choice. It will also be really helpful for us and for other creators out there who want to listen to content that help them to support them to develop their creative career, that you leave a review or rating on this podcast. Thank you so much. May we all bring intentionality to our creative path and our creative practice. I will see you next time.